Qingjing Peak's disciples fell into an uproar. The disciples from the other branches were calmer, as they weren't familiar with Qingjing Peak's internal politics. They even thought that Shen Qingqiu had certainly selected a disciple he was proud of, an unparalleled talent. That was the only way they could hope to best this demon elder who appeared to be in his hundreds. It was strange that they'd never heard of this person, and he did seem rather young. Was it possible that Qingjing Peak's disciples weren't yet aware of Luo Binghe's true abilities? Ming Fan's face had gone white.
Shizun, he stammered. To send this little apprentice brother, isn't it unbefitting?
Oh, said Shen Qingqiu. Then will you go? Ming Fan repeatedly shook his head. Even though he didn't want to offer himself and he would be happy to see Luo Binghe beaten to a pulp, this matter concerned their sex honor. To let themselves be invaded and their peak's nameplates taken, and to set up themselves up to lose this competition, Changqiu Mountain would lose face, and Qingjing Peak would lose a massive amount of face. Ning Yingying was even more anxious, to the point that she teared up. She defiantly grabbed Luo Binghe's arm while stomping and yelling, "No, no, no!" Luo Binghe had no real battle experience, and if he had to face a demon elder covered from head to toe with spikes and poison, carrying a hammer that weighed at least several 100 kilograms, he'd definitely be beaten to death. You lot think I wanted him to enter? I was also forced into this by the system. I have no choice, Shen Qingqiu thought. Then he calmly stated, I said he'll be our representative, so he will. Are you unsatisfied with this master's decision? Ying Ying, let go of him. Ning Ying saw the stony look on her master's face and knew there was nothing she could do. Luo Binghe patted her soothingly. Don't worry, apprentice sister. He spoke in a steady voice even though his face was stark white. I may be untalented, but if Shi Zun has chosen me, I will spare no effort. Even if it means I must stake my life, I won't lose face for the sect. Ning Ying rubbed away her tears and let go of Luo Binghe's arm. As if she couldn't stand to stay there and watch her crush take a beating, she stomped her feet several times and ran off whimpering. Shen Qingqiu was overjoyed. Good, run! If she ran, then the trouble she was supposed to make after this drama wouldn't crop up. The crowd saw that although the youth who approached was upright and honorable in body and spirit, with good potential and foundation, he was clearly a young disciple with shallow cultivation. In contrast, the demon representative, Elder Skyhammer, loomed with his bear-like build. Compared to Luo Binghe's still developing figure, he radiated an oppressive aura, his entire body emitting dark, roiling demonic qi. Everyone felt hesitation. Some hypothesized that perhaps Luo Binghe was hiding his strength, but when the fight actually started, they were rendered speechless. Hiding his strength? No, this kid really wouldn't be able to beat this guy. This wasn't a match. This was a one-sided showdown. From the moment Luo Binghe stepped forward, he essentially had no chance to strike. The demon elder's strength was incomparable, his swings filled with the vigor of a tiger. Even though Luo Binghe did his best to dodge and searched for an opening to attack, from time to time the hammer still managed to smash into him. Not only were Changqiu Mountain's disciples dumbstruck, the demons were also at a loss for words. This was too terrible. Isn't this outcome predetermined? Someone murmured. What's the point of continuing the match? Elder Skyhammer laughed skyward, the sound like a great bell.
Well said. The child should hurry up and admit defeat. This elder can spare his life.
No, he will win, Shen Qingqiu said lightly. Luo Binghe was the overpowered protagonist. Of course he was going to win. It was only that the path to victory would be difficult. Shen Qingqiu's voice was neither loud nor soft, but it had just enough volume to carry to the center of the match area. Luo Binghe had directly taken multiple heavy blows, and he was holding back several mouthfuls of blood. When those confident words entered his ears, he somehow managed to swallow them down. He would win? Shi Zun had called on him to enter because he really thought Luo Binghe would win? The horde of demons laughed and sneered. They shouted at Luo Binghe to hurry up and admit defeat. Yet, Luo Binghe did not heed their wishes. Even as he took several more blows in a row, he became more and more poised, turning a deaf ear to the jeers and shouts from the crowd. His steps became lighter and more graceful. Soon, 9 times out of 10, Elder Skyhammer's giant weapon couldn't so much as brush him. It seems like the only places on Elder Skyhammer's body that weren't covered with spikes were his face and fists. This wasn't actually good news. It meant that the Elder had extensively trained these 2 places so that they wouldn't be vulnerable even without the protection of poisonous spikes. At the same time, this was also very likely the only breach in his defenses. Luo Binghe slowed his breaths and attentively studied his opponent. On the surface, it had seemed that Shi Zun had chosen Luo Binghe only to make things difficult for him. However, if Luo Binghe lost this round, not only would he lose face, but the entire sect would as well. And furthermore, as the one who'd chosen to put him forward, Shen Qingqiu would be especially at fault. That meant that Shi Zun would only have chosen Luo Binghe for this match if he really did firmly believe he would win. Thus, did student Luo Binghe's colorful imagination successfully activate the massive fog of misunderstanding system. No one had ever believed in him like this, if only because he'd been entrusted with something so vitally important, he absolutely had to win and make everyone see. Once again, that huge hammer came whistling toward him. Luo Binghe's pupils shrank, and gathering energy within his palms, he condensed his qi into an attack. The audience had been enthralled by this youth who kept persevering without hesitation. Though Luo Binghe had no opportunities to counterattack, he never gave up looking for a chance to do so, and he furthermore refused to admit defeat. At this instant, when the chance to counterattack finally came, Luo Binghe seized it with incomparable precision. The deadlock had lasted for nearly an hour, but the 3rd match finally came to an end. Other than Shen Qingqiu, no one had anticipated this conclusion. Elder Skyhammer, who was covered from head to toe in poisonous spikes and boasted 100 years' worth of skill, had been defeated by a youth of 15 years. Sure enough, Liu Mingyan and Sha Hualing were drawn to Luo Binghe. 2 pairs of beautiful eyes fixed neatly upon him, gazing at Luo Binghe's form and unwilling to divert their attention. Captured, Liu Mingyan and Sha Hualing's interests became famous in a fight during the battle with the demons who invaded Changqiong Mountain Sect. Protagonist satisfaction points plus 500. Shen Qingqiu was furious. How dare you? The deduction would have been 1,000, but the profit only 500? Wow, what a black-hearted system. It shouldn't have had such a double standard. However, it was fine, because now everyone was thinking the same thing. Though young, Luo Binghe was truly worthy of respect, and Shen Qingqiu is unfathomable. Sha Hualing held herself back for a long while, then finally squeezed out her concession. Changqiong Mountain is certainly full of young talent and has produced generations of young heroes. Ling Er is indeed impressed. Well said, said Shen Qingqiu. Since we have our result, could the young miss withdraw with her people? Please excuse us for being such a mess right now. We are unable to continue entertaining our guests from far away. The meaning hidden within his words, well, it wasn't hidden. This was his direct command telling them to get out. Sha Hualing was filled with anger, but there was nowhere for it to go. Her fingers clenched in the gauzy red cloth on her body for a moment, then she suddenly exploded. She reached out and gave Elder Skyhammer a fast and violent slap. To face Senior Shen's young disciple and yet lose so badly? Her sweet voice said angrily. You've lost every last bit of face for the demon race. Elder Skyhammer was also pitiable. Hierarchy within the demon realm was strict, and Sha Hualing was a saintess of noble birth. He took the slap and could only grovel. He dared not to fight back, only saying again and again,
Your subordinate is incompetent and begs the saintess for punishment.
Shen Qingqiu couldn't stand watching anymore. Miss Shah, if you wish to discipline your subordinates, please do so somewhere else. Chongding Peak is not a place for the nobility to throw their weight around. With that slap, Sha Hualing had vented her anger, finally releasing some of her resentment. She turned back, full of smiles. It is as you say, Senior Shen. It was just when Linger saw the incredible young talent you foster, then looked at the trash under her, her heart was filled with disappointment, so she lost control for a moment. I beg you not to laugh. She then turned, facing Elder Skyhammer with the expression of a wicked stepmother. For Elder Singaram to lose Senior Shen in their match was a matter of course. Yet you also lost your match. There is no need for me to say anything. Figure out what to do with yourself. As to what she meant by this, Elder Skyhammer clearly understood. His heart chilled on the spot. When they first arrived, he thought that other than Shen Qingqiu, the people of Chongding Peak were a bunch of half-grown children, disciples with shallow cultivation. Hence, he'd wanted to take advantage of easy pickings to earn favor before the new saintess. He'd never thought that he'd fail terribly instead, to the point he would lose his life. He looked up and saw Luo Binghe surrounded by the crowd, all asking concernedly about his well-being. Malice surged within him. He didn't dare touch Shen Qingqiu, but this child who'd brought him so much misfortune, he'd absolutely had to make him take his fair share of the blame, to drag him to death as well. Shen Qingqiu had been paying close attention to the demon's every movement and expression. He didn't miss the flash of nefarious intent in Elder Skyhammer's eyes. But demons were truly a bold race, taking actions immediately and without even the slightest bit of buffering time. Only a second after coming up with the idea, Elder Skyhammer careened forward, swinging his weapon. Elder Skyhammer's body was large and tall, and he quickly closed the distance, like a mountain of metal hurtling towards Luo Binghe. Luo Binghe's injuries weren't light, and so his movements were also sluggish. He would certainly be hit, yet Shen Qingqiu let out a cold and in a flash, his figure suddenly appeared in Elder Skyhammer's path. With the tip of his fan, he tapped the bend of Elder Skyhammer's knee. Elder Skyhammer collapsed on the spot. He really collapsed, his entire body crashed to the ground unconscious. As for that giant hammer, Shen Qingqiu quickly scooped it up and held it in his hand, weighing it. As expected, it was a tad hefty. However, given the elegant quality of his image, holding a giant hammer wasn't very aesthetic, so Shen Qingqiu immediately held it into the horde of demons. With a muffled thud, the head of the hammer slammed into the ground. The display was significantly shocking, and his intimidating air became even more terrifying. Shen Qingqiu's smile didn't reach his eyes. You wanted to kill him? The disciples under my tutelage are not yours to bully. When he spoke these words with awe-inspiring righteousness, not only were the demons at a loss for words, Shen Qingqiu himself felt that his inner face reddened slightly. Scum villain, weren't you the one who sent your disciple out to be abused by others? Luo Binghe stared at the teal-clothed back before him, having forgotten to even say thanks. He only knew that his master had saved him yet again. Shi Zun was always like this. He would seem to be harsh on Luo Binghe, yet, when it came down to the critical moment, he always stood before his student. Shen Qingqiu threw a glance behind him. Are you all right? Gonna shamelessly try to farm some more favor points, he thought. This disciple is fine, Luo Binghe said in a rush. Many thanks to Shi Zun for assistance. Ayah, this child is so foolishly sweet. Shen Qingqiu's inner face grew even redder, and he quickly turned back to Sha Hualing. Miss Sha, you need to properly discipline your subordinates. If you can't stand losing, why set yourself up for the potential of it with these 3 matches? Sha Hualing also hadn't predicted Elder Skyhammer's attack and was slightly embarrassed. She was just about to say a couple of perfunctory words appropriate for an apology, when, at that instant, something happened that no one could have predicted. Elder Skyhammer, who'd been lying motionless on the ground, suddenly leaped up and hurled himself at Luo Binghe a second time.